Recording in progress.
Page 451. We were speaking about the levels of the Hashem Pakad Asara, Vayas L'Sara Kasher Diber, that we spoke about, that there is two types of levels of Pekida. There is Pekida by a woman, and there's Pekida by the earth. We also have the idea of Pekida, and these two levels of Pekida also have the idea of Leida, that there's the conception, and then there's the birth. The same thing by the earth. There's the rains coming down, Min HaShamayim. That's the level of Pekida by that case. And there is when it gives forth the food. So then we explain from the Maimon the Rebbe Rashab that these are interrelated with each other, because since we know that Bone Chayim Mezoyne, children, life, sustenance, are all comes from the same source. It's la b'schus taliyim, so it's not dependent on merit. It's dependent on mazel. So therefore, we see this common denominator: children. That's the Pekida Ha'isha. That's the remembrance of the woman, the wife. Sustenance comes primarily from the earth. That the bread comes from the ground. And therefore we have this common denominator, because they are both coming from the same shoyrish that is not dependent on the zchus, it's not dependent on merit, it's dependent on mazel. Once we've established the commonality between them, we also explained that in the pasuk Hashem Pok Tesara, Kasher Diber, Vayas Hashem Lasara, that these are the two things, conception and birth, or remembrance of Hashem and birth. So after all of that, now he wants to understand this Maimer Chazal, that it says that these three things, Bon Chayim Mezoyne, Lav B'schus Atali, it's not dependent upon merit, Ela B'mazel Atali, it's dependent on a mazel. That we had the question, Ein Mazel Yisrael. We know that as opposed to the nations of the world, that all their hashpah and all that, everything comes down to them through the mazolos, the different astrological signs. There's the lion, and there's the lamb, and all these different constellations, and the sun, the moon, the stars, all these contribute and are channels through which the nations of the world receive their hashpah. Whereas Yidden are beyond that. The different mazolas, the different astrological signs, do not determine and are not where they get their hashpah from. So how does the Chazal here say that it's the mazel Talia? So therefore the Rebbe Rashab brings that ein mazel Yisrael means to say that the ayin is the mazel for the Yidden. The level of ayin that's higher than Seder Ishtalshlos, higher than perception, higher than any type of comprehension whatsoever, that is the source where all the hashpahs come down for the Yidden, whether it's children, like we were talking about, the level of the Pekida of the wife, or whether it's sustenance, which is the idea of rains. And we explained, and this is the reason also why Parnasa can come down with great harchava, because since it's coming from a place that's higher than Seder Ishtalshos, beyond any sort of limitations, so therefore it manifests itself as well down here in this world in a level of beyond limitations, beyond any type of constrictions. Perhaps we could put it simply that literally a person can be doing a minor thing and be, like I think we mentioned this yesterday as well, and be unbelievably successful in business, whereas sometimes it could be the other way, because it's not a matter of zchus, it's not a matter of what quid pro quo, it's a level that's higher than the Seder Ishtalshlos entirely. And then the Rebbe says that this is connected with the mazel of the neshama. Just like there's the mazel of Seder Ishtalshlus, the level of ayin, so too there's the mazel and the ayin of the neshama, that manifests itself in our avodah b'chol meidecha. Just like the ayin is something that's beyond medidas v'agbalos, beyond any limitations, so too in a person's avodah of b'chol meidecha, that's also going out of his boundaries and limitations, beyond b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshecha, that include all the koiches hanefesh, that's totally beyond the koiches hanefesh, and therefore, because it is by him a level that's beyond the koiches hanefesh, so therefore it reaches as well to a level that's higher than Seder Ishtalshlus, because that's the mazel of the neshama relates to the mazel above, to the ayin above. And he explains that it doesn't just remain above, but mazels from the word pouring down, running down, that it comes down all the way into the physical world until it affects a bracha in all the matters of Bana Chaim Mazoyin Ravicha. So now, he's going to, up till now he explained why the Avodah B'chol Ma'odcha taps into that, because it reflects that. My Ma'od, my going out of my boundaries, taps into a level that's higher than boundaries above. Now we can explain another component, why by going out of my boundaries, out of my limitations, in a way of Ava B'chol Meidecha, do I reach all these brachas to come down. See, the second paragraph on the second page of the printouts. Gam yesh loymar, we can also say, Mashayidei Avodah B'chol Meidecha, through the avodah with all your might, going out of our limitations. We draw down Mamshachas beyond the chain order of descent. Not only is it something that's beyond Seder Ishtalshlus, but it comes down into Seder Ishtalshlus, like we also said, the idea of that we are reaching such a high level where we are creating we are making his will. But the way it relates to Makim, to the place down here, to the physical world, that it impacts the physical world and children and life and comfortable living. So why does the B'chol Meidecha affect this? Hine aidei havoida b'chol meidecha poilin gam inyan ha'achtus b'koiches hanefesh. Through the avodah with all your might, we also affect the idea of the oneness in all the soul powers. Now, if you remember before, we said b'chol levavcha, that's the midas, nefesh elokis, nefesh abamis, b'chol nafshcha, that means all the koiches hanefesh. So, what's the difference between what we talk about now, b'chol meidecha, that affects an achdus and all the koiches hanefesh, versus what we're talking about now through b'chol meidecha, it causes a skalus of the koiches. So the Rebbe says, Hainu, the noise, ha'achdus in the koiches. Hainu, the noise was in addition to the fact, Shagam, idea avoida b'chol avavcha, b'chol nafshcha, efshali is skalus ha'koiches, that also through the avoida with all your heart and with all your soul. There could be the intermingling of the soul powers. Like we explained before, we mentioned the idea of the Yud-Beis Gvulei Alachsen, that it includes all the different joints, all the different diagonal joints where you have the Chesed joint with the Tiferes and the Yisoid joint with Netzach, etc., etc. 12 different points of meeting between them. Still in all, even though there is Iskalus, it's not necessarily achdus. In addition to this, shaydei avoid the b'chol moedcha shebetzem hanefesh, through the avoid the b'chol moedcha, that's in the essence of the soul. Poilim gam inyan achdus b'koiches hanefesh. We also affect the idea of the oneness and unity of the soul powers. L'chura, the idea of the difference between iskalus and achdus is that when you're dealing with iskalus, that means each one is seen individually. You have chesed, you have gevura, and one may influence and temper the other, like chesed shebegvura, gevura shebechesed, or they may stand distinct from each other. Like we mentioned yesterday about Avram Avinu being told by the Akedah, now I know that you are one that fears heaven, because up till then his avodah was primarily about chesed, achnas orchim, etc. And then his avodah was with gvura, severity, ready to sacrifice his son. But that's only, at the most, it's a level of iskalus, it's an intermingling. Achdus means that one does not even see the differences between one and the other. Perhaps one could say that Achdus in such a way that they're not even conscious of what soul powers need to be brought into play. What's conscious over here is the job, the purpose. Let's say, for example, I might be right-handed, and I give preference, and I usually use my right hand to do certain things, and I might make a conscious decision, especially up Yalacha, to use my right hand for certain things. You're supposed to get dressed with your right part first, and many things we're supposed to do with the right first. Only exceptional cases that we're supposed to use our weaker hand. But sometimes, when I just want to do something, I'm not thinking about my right hand, my left hand. If I need to reach for something, and it just happens to be that the item might be closer to my left hand, I'm not even thinking about it. My left hand just stretches out without thought. Because over there, one could say that's a level of achdus. It's all me. It's not my right hand and my left hand and my right ear, my left ear, my right leg and my left leg. It's not about that. It's I. All these things are part of the one entity called me, and that me wants to reach that item. So it's not about, and I might have to walk. So again, I don't think about that I'm walking now to be able to reach it. I just go ahead and do it because they are all part of the I. So perhaps that's the difference that he's talking about, the difference of achdus versus his kalus. So the Rebbe says that is a result of b'chol maidacha. When we reach into the core being of our soul, of our nefesh, the level of the etzem neshama, the mazel shem neshama, beyond the visions. So I don't serve Hashem with this particular power or that particular power. The Rebbe a lot of times would urge people by Fabrengens that, I'm sitting in yeshiva and learning. My job is to learn Torah. What are you telling me about reaching out to somebody to do Torah mitzvahs? And maybe I'll do you a favor and do that and go on Mitzrayim. Someone that has an achdus in his koiches hanefesh, who's serving the Eibishter because the level of b'chol ma'adecha, there's no distinction. All of these things are part of his service to Hashem. Whether it's davening, whether it's learning, whether it's helping out another Yid beruchnis, whether it's helping out another Yid begashmis. It's not about this is more to my liking, this is less to my liking. It's all part of the oneness. So then, as a result of my avodah being in such a type of way where I transcend my different aspects of my being and I make a unity amongst them, so the Rebbe goes on to say, through the idea of oneness and unity in the person's service, so then I tap into a level of elikus that's also beyond the vision. Since I am serving the Eibishter in a way of complete oneness and unity, so I tap into something that is called achdus apshuta, simple, pure, unadulterated oneness. There's what's called in Jewish philosophy, there's achdus murkeves, there's a oneness that's made up of parts, and then there's a oneness that's parshah, that has no part to it. Ad la'achdus shalomayla migdarim, the achdus of period, until a oneness that's beyond even the definitions and paradigms of oneness and separation, meaning, sometimes you gotta say it's one, and not even, and not separated. That means it's because, like we said before about the very fact you have to tell me that he is the place of the world and the world is not his place, that means it's already relating to the place. The same thing, if you're saying unity to distinguish it from disunity and separation, so that means that you're at a place where there is a possibility for period for the separation. The Rebbe says that by bringing out in my avodah the actus of all the koiches, so then I tap into the level of Hashem's oneness that's beyond even these type of definitions of unity and disunity. And when a person taps into that, she's a poil hamshoch zabracha banachayim zayin revichim. Getting back to what we were saying before, that it's the idea of ein mazel Yisrael, that the ayin is the source of brachas for the Yidden, that the banachayim zayin revichim, the children, the life, and a comfortable living come from this level that's beyond any type of division. And how do we reach that level? It's beyond any type of division that comes through my internal unity. So the Rebbe goes on to say, the third paragraph on the page. We can connect this b'derech efshar possibly imam b'vur b'maimer addition, but it's explained in the first maimer shenitfas mishnas tafresh mem gimel that was printed from the year tafresh mem gimel lebal yom milados of the one whose birthday is Chav Cheshvan, the Rebbe Rashab. So it's the first maimer that the Rebbe Rashab said in the year tafresh mem gimel. As we said, Tafshin Mem Gimel, when this maimer was said, was 100 years from the yard site of the Rebbe Marash. So therefore, the Rebbe Rashab's first maimer was in Tafresh Mem Gimel, and he explained something about over there about oneness and unity. In that maimer he explains the idea of oneness and its advantage and its quality and its strength. To such a degree that even on the other side, in the side of Klippim, through the fact that the entire land was one language, they said, behold, they are one nation and one language. And through that, according to Chassidus and Kabbalah, they were able to draw down all types of brachas because of their unity. We actually had a similar thing in the other maimer about the Yidden. Even when they didn't do what's right by Ephraim, they were successful in the war because of their unity. So if that was then without by the nations of the world, how much more so when it comes to Yidden, and not just Yidden, but Binyan HaGedusha, but when it comes to matters of holiness, the idea achtus bahem, through the unity that's in the Yidden, mamshichim and makar naila b'yoyser, they draw down from a very elevated source. Like it's explained over there in that maimer at the beginning of page 6 over there, so too in the Alter Rebbe's Torah and the Tzemach Tzedek's Torah, at the conclusion of the maimer that is titled with the words Vayhi Kol Haaretz Safa Achas, that speaks over there about the Doir HaFlaga, the Doir that built the tower, and explains over there the Makar HaAchdus B'Shem Havayim. The source of unity is the Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei. There are 7 names that are not erased. You're not allowed to erase them because of their holiness. There's other nicknames for Hashem that are erasable. Let's say the Gemara we had before, Makim. You could erase the word Makim. It's not one of the 7 holy names, even though we use that as a description or a term for Hashem. But there's 7 names like Kel, Elokim, Adonai, which cannot be erased. V'shem Havayu, Shem Ha'etzem, Shem Ha'mefurish, Ugam Shem Ha'miyuchid. It's the name of Hashem. It's the essential name. It's the name that is called explicit. It's also the name of unity. Shem HaMiyuchad means both unique and also the name that shows on unity. And we'll soon explain where we see the unity of Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei. There are in the spheres of Atzilus, in the spheres in general, there's Oidus and Kelim. When we talk about the other names, so you have the name Elokim, you have the name Adnai, and Elokim has to do with Gvura, and Adnai has to do with Malchus, and Tzvokes has to do with Netzach and Hoid, and Kel has to do with Chesed. So those names pertain to the Kalim of the spheres. The Oidos, whether it's the Oid of Chesed, the Oid of Malchus, the Oid of Chachma, these are all from Shem Havaya. So there's a difference between the Kalim and the Oidos when it comes to the other names of the Eibishter. B'Shem Havayim, Gam Hakli Hu Havaya, but the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Keli that's the sphere that's associated with Shem Havayim, which is Spheres Atiferes. So even the Keli is also Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei. So that means that in Shem Havaya we have the unity of both the Keli and the Oir. Hainu Tachlis Ha'achdus, the Oidos v'Kelim, the total unity of the lights and the vessels. V'zel Mashavaya Hu Gam Loshem Mahava. That's also why Havaya is from the expression of bringing into being. V'Loshem Hoya Hoy V'Yir. It's also about was, is, and will be. Both these things show on unity. Hainu. The Avshin Nimshach Begidrei Amokim Vazman, though Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei comes down within the category of place. That's what Mahava is. Mahava means he brings into being existence. And also it relates to time. Hoya Hoy V'Yir. So that has to do with time. So these are things that seemingly would be separated. Sham Gufa, in time itself, it takes the past, present, and future. It says it's all as one. It's all included in one name. The name Yud Kei Vav Kei includes in it the Haya and the Haiva and the Yiyah. Inyan Ha'achdus B'Tachlis, the total oneness, and the same thing, the fact that the Eibush is the one that brings place into being. It makes a complete unity in place. The Rebbe also speaks about. I mean, other Mamorim, going back to the Rebbe Rashab. In other places, the Rebbe talks about and brings down this idea of Nikmas Havaya b'Midyan, that the challenge against Midyan was a nekama, an avenging Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei. Why was it avenging Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei? Because Midyan is from the word Modoin Umariva, dispute, argument. Shem Havaya is about Achdus. Defeating Midyan is with Achdus, and Midyan is the polar opposite of the Achdus of Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei. So now the Rebbe brings us down practically to us. It's not just about the internal Achdus of our koiches, but there's an avoid of Achdus that we have to manifest outside. So he says in the last paragraph of the page, the idea of avoid. I'm sorry, I already said ahead what he says later here in this Maimer about Midian. Sorry about that. The idea in avoid is saying that the obvious role there has to be the idea of loving another Yid. Word betanya periklamit base, like explained in Tanya chapter 32. There has to be loving the creatures, like in quotes. What it says in Pirkei Avos, having the Talmid of Shalarim, to be from the students, disciples of Aaron, that you love the creatures, but you don't just love them, but you bring them closer. And you affect in them. That's how strong your love is. That you affect in them, you bring them close. Until you bring them close in L'Torah. And not only is it loving another Yid, which still in loving another Yid, it could be there's me and there's him. But the ultimate level is the oneness, that we see ourselves as one entity and one body. Top of the last page, like it's explained in the Maimer Cholzu of Tafresh Nun Tes of the Rebbe Rashab, whose birthday is Chav Cheshvan, the Melchemes Midyan. Here he says what I was saying before: the war of Midyan, the battle of Midyan. It was about placing Hashem's vengeance against Midyan. It's the war and the vengeance with dispute and argument. In other words, fighting against disunity. Shezoi nikmas havaya. This is why it's called the vengeance of Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei. Lefisha Midian hu amenagid l'Shem havaya, because Midian is what opposes the name Yud Kei Vav Kei. She'inyane achtes kanal, because the idea of Yud Kei Vav Kei is unity. Midian shows on disunity. So the feet of Midian is standing up for Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei, for the unity of Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei. By day Avos Yisrael v'Achdas Yisrael, through the love of another Yid, and through the unity of Yidden, the oneness of Yidden, Nasa Barcheinu Avinu Kolanu Ke'echad, becomes that our Father benches us together as one, like the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, that when is the brachas come down, when it's Kolanu Ke'echad, when is Barcheinu Avinu, when it's Kolanu Ke'echad, when all of us are like one. That all the brachas come down in children and life and sustenance, make a comfortable living. I think I mentioned this yesterday, that all of them should be comfortable. Normally, when we read the expression means children, life, and making a comfortable living. Instead of a person can make a living, it can be chas v'shalom very difficult. But the Rebbe says everything to increase, to look for ways to increase brachas, that the revichi doesn't just go on the last thing, mezoine, but the revichi, the comfortable, goes also on the previous things. Bane and chayim, mezoine, all the bane and chayim, all of them should be in a way of revichi, in a comfortable and broad way. Last paragraph, Hinei, the great quality of the idea of loving another Yid and the unity and the oneness of Yidden. It's not only that through that all the brachas come down in children, life and sustenance in a comfortable way, and all of them should be comfortable. Like we said before concerning benches our Father all together as one, that through being all together as one, that's where the brachas come down. In addition to this, through this we also fulfill the request concerning the redemption. That's the request of capital 123 of Tehillim. This year was going into the year Tavshin Mem Gimel, was going into the Rebbe Rashab's. It was the Rebbe Rashab's 122nd birthday, so it would be the capital of 123. We have had enough. Our soul has been enough from the scoffers. That we request for the conclusion of the goals. To you I raise up my eyes, the one that's sitting in heaven. And the Tzemach Tzedek explains concerning this in his notes on Tehillim, and I believe we had this in the previous Maimer. The fact that it says Hayoshvi with an additional letter Yud, instead of saying Hayoshev Bashamayim, it says Hayoshvi Bashamayim. What's that Yud at the end comes to indicate? We had this in the earlier Maimer. Zamoidal in Yisoid Abba, that indicates the level of Yisoid of Chachma, Hakosher and Pnimius Abba. That's connected with the inner level of Chachma. Shu Pnimius Atik, that Pnimius Abba, it says in Kabbalah and Chassidus, is Pnimius Atik is the inner level of Atik Yomin, the inner level of Kesed. And we know Shagili Pnimius Atik, Yilas Lavi Kanoida, that the revelation of the inner level of Atik will be when Mashiach comes, as it's known, Ba'ifin Shashaychin Agili Pnimius Atik, to the degree that it's applicable to revelation in the inner level of Atik. All this we effect through loving another Yid and the unity of Yid. Because in addition to the fact, through loving another Yid and unity and oneness amongst Yid, we negate and we nullify the cause of the exile. Like it's explained in the Gemara, the cause of the exile was baseless hate. The repair for this is baseless love. In addition to this, That loving a fellow as yourself is connected with loving Hashem your God, like it says, someone that loves the Father, loves those that the Father loves. She's a kosher in Mahafti Hashem. That's connected with the fact that Hashem said, I loved you. So in other words, that's why we love another Yid, because the Eibishter loves another Yid. But since we have this connection with Hashem, it draws down all the blessings until the primary bracha of the true and complete redemption that's soon mamish where the Saint will go with our children, sons and daughters, behold him with the clouds of heaven, to the holy land, and to the Yerushalayim, the holy city, and to the Mikdash that Hashem's hands prepared. They will awaken and sing those that are resting in the earth, and the ones whose birthday is the Rebbe Shav amongst them, speedily in our days of Mamish.